Hello, friends. Welcome back to this Cycle Sync series that we're in. Today, we're going to be talking with my friend Rachel, who's a functional medicine and holistic health coach. She works primarily with women with gastrointestinal, thyroid, and autoimmune conditions. And I'm going to let her do a little bit more of an introduction on herself in a minute. But if this is the first video that you clicked on, we are in the middle of a Cycle Sync series. We're talking all about the power and what the power is of tuning into our cycle, whether that's our menstrual cycle or our moon phases. I use them very interchangeably in my coaching business. However, I think pretty much for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to just be sticking with your menstrual phase. But you want to learn a little bit more about how to equate it with the moon phases and kind of tap into that energy as well, you can watch this video. This is the intro to the Cycle Sync series. Otherwise, we will get started. So first of all, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and having this discussion. I'm really excited to chat with you because you're someone that, again, I feel like I say this in every intro, but you're someone that I watch and I see that you really live and you embody what you're talking about. You're someone that like walks the walk, not just talks the talk. And I think that's really important in coaching or mentoring or anything in that field. If you are the one that is practicing, because I think what I've learned is we have so much more intuitive knowledge when we're the ones practicing what we're preaching. So thank you for coming. I'm super excited to have you. If you could give a little brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and what got you into functional medicine, holistic healthcare, tell us your story.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation. All of this is something that I'm just so passionate about. Rachel, I have been a health coach for about 3 years. I got into the functional medicine side of it when I found a company that I was working for, and we worked with some clinicians. So we worked with some nurse practitioners and medical doctors. For those of you who don't really know what that means, is that it's alternative healthcare where really we're looking at the body as a fully connected system and getting to the root cause of symptoms and the root cause of disease so that we can treat that instead of just simply masking symptoms with maybe medications or something like that. So I found functional medicine and really believed in it because through my own health journey, I probably would have saved a lot of time and probably money, and maybe a little bit of tears, if I kind of took more of a functional medicine approach and did lab testing and really got to the root of my problems, instead of just trying to manage the symptoms for many years. When I was in college, I really struggled with my menstrual cycle. I was just having really, really horrible periods, and doctors kind of just threw me on birth control, and that was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it just threw my entire body off. Now, not everyone is as sensitive as I was, but I had pretty much all of the side effects, like weight gain, just being overly emotional, like acne. I had really, really bad anxiety, and it took me a while to make the connection that it was the birth control that was the culprit of that. But when traditional doctors were unable to really help me with my symptoms, I just kind of took it into my own hands, dove into tons of research, really learned so much more about the menstrual cycle than I even knew there was to know. And so that really got me super passionate because it helped me figure out my own health issues. And then I got really frustrated that nobody else that I knew or nobody else around me had these answers.
Yeah. I think you have such, unfortunately, a typical story of birth control or just having like a harsh menstrual phase. Oh my gosh, menstrual phase, I guess we could call it. And I think that's something like I've dove deep into obviously all of this too. And it's something that's so normalized of like having cramps or having acne or being overly emotional or having like these super strong food cravings that are not maybe serving our bodies in the best way. And we just kind of normalize that. And that makes me so frustrated too. So hence why we're having this conversation. So thank you for sharing your story. And I hope that it helps people. I hope it resonates with people. And I think it will. One thing that I think I want to start here. One thing that I know about you and that I really appreciate about you and your coaching style is that you really preach intuitive eating. So let's start there. What does that mean? What does that look like for you? And then eventually how we can start incorporating it ourselves.
Yeah. I think intuitive eating can mean different things for different people. And I think now for me, kind of coming through my health journey and getting to a better place, I really thrive with eating intuitively, understanding what my body needs, how much,
Mhm.
and really just like paying more attention to the signs and signals that my body is telling me
Mhm.
to dictate my food choices. I think in the health and wellness world, intuitive eating is definitely way more popular now. Um, and I think there's a few of like factors to consider with intuitive eating. You kind of mentioned uh, just a bit ago how maybe being on birth control could cause cravings and things like that.
Mhm.
I think one thing to know is that there are a lot of conditions and medications and things like that that are altering our natural body's rhythms, our hormone
Mhm.
shifts, and things like that that can impact our cravings and metabolism and all of those things. So, intuitive eating isn't necessarily just eating whatever you want whenever you want it.
Yeah.
Um, it's a little bit more tricky than that because it really is about listening, being mindful and paying attention to signs and symptoms, like I said,
Mhm.
to kind of help you dictate with food choices. But
Mhm.
for me, and kind of what I talk to my clients about is just really listening to appetite, listening to when things
Okay.
maybe feel off, um,
Mhm.
and really taking note of that so that you have a lot of information to go off of when you are making food choices.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. Thank you for bringing it up because I think sometimes we have these thoughts of like, oh, well, I really want ice cream, so that must mean that I need ice cream, right? One of the things that I talk to my clients about that I would like your perspective on is when we have these cravings, like let's say the example of ice cream, looking instead of just taking that face value, like, okay, my body wants ice cream, looking a little bit deeper and asking yourself, what does this ice cream contain? So ice cream has dairy, ice cream has vitamin D, ice cream obviously has sugar. It has protein because of the milk. So could it be possibly that maybe my body needs one of those things and not necessarily the ice cream? And our body only knows how to speak in what it already knows and what we like typically eat. So if you're somebody that is maybe just starting this journey, um, I personally think that it could be difficult because you haven't like made those connections yet, or your body hasn't really explored maybe different forms of protein or different forms of dairy, which we don't have to get into that conversation. Um, but is that something that you kind of also align with, or are there other tips that you teach or practice yourself?
Yeah, oh man, my brain just went in so many directions. So, as you were saying that, I thought of a recent conversation I had with one of my clients, and we were talking about like bored eating and stress eating and how that kind of plays into um, intuitive eating and how it can make it challenging.
Mhm.
Because sometimes it's not even necessarily like nutrient deficiencies, which we can talk about that too. But it can be even like more of an emotional need,
Mhm.
or something like that. So with this particular client, she was talking to me about how, she works remotely. And so it's like kind of
Mhm.
a feeling of loneliness and not having that like social connection. And it took us a while to make that connection. But the
Mhm.
more we kind of talked about her eating habits and the struggle with that, we recognized that that's kind of the underlying need that she had.
Wow.
Um, and that was causing her to just, eat in the evenings when she was alone and,
Mhm.
not really going out and socializing. And maybe she hadn't even talked to like 5 people in that whole day.
Yeah,
Um,
I love
and
that.
so I thought of that, and then kind of circling back around to like deficiencies and nutrients and things like that. I think that's a big part of like intuitive eating is understanding what your body needs from a nutrient standpoint. Kind of talking about the menstrual cycle, a lot of women are like, oh, craving chocolate, right?
Yes.
That's like the biggest thing that we
Huge.
talk about, right? Or like, oh, I just need some chocolate. Well, I mean, I think some people know this, but maybe not everyone, that chocolate, especially dark chocolate, is high in magnesium. And that's something that people are commonly deficient in, especially women. And so our bodies need a little bit more of that around our menstrual cycle or our menstrual phase. And so that's kind of where that craving can come from, is a magnesium deficiency. And so as we were kind of talking about, eating and the menstrual cycle and things like that, that's definitely something that I pay attention to and tell my clients to pay attention to is, what foods are you craving? Because that can give us a lot of information on what's going on in their body too.
Wow, I love that, and thank you for that example because that's such a popular example, I think, or it comes up a lot.
Mhm.
Another thing that came up, specific, like, types of food and cravings in each phase, and maybe you would be able to more eloquently say this, so I'm not going to try, but in the luteal phase, what I understand for various reasons with our hormone levels, we may crave more carbohydrates. That example or any other kinds of examples that you have with specific phases, maybe seeing some overlaying patterns, like coming up with clients in their specific phases. Is that something that you deal with?
So if we kind of just want to break it down,
Mhm.
I will usually just kind of talk about like the menstrual phase when you're on your period, the follicular phase, and luteal phase. Ovulation is also part of the phase, but I don't think that it's much smaller. So we're just gonna kind of break it up to like kind of like your period, first half of your cycle, second half of your cycle. I think it's really
Okay,
easy for people to keep up that way.
sure.
So talking about the luteal phase, that's the second half. That's kind of leading up to your period. Your body does need more calories in
Mhm.
general. Carbohydrates, maybe. You may be craving those carbohydrates specifically because you may feel a lot more fatigued. Your body is kind of preparing for your period. Essentially, your uterine lining is building up and getting ready to shed. And that's like a pretty significant body process that's happening.
Mhm.
So your body is exerting a lot of energy doing that. You can kind of think of it as doing an exercise, like your body is exercising a little bit on the inside.
Yeah.
And so that's why you will feel a little bit more tired. You'll probably need more rest, and just a little bit more calories. Carbohydrates are good because it can give you some more energy.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why people tend to crave a little bit more carbs. But generally, having a little bit more of a or like higher caloric intake in your luteal phase is pretty typical.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you, and that was really good, illustration that, like, our body the inside of our body is working out.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think so in the follicular phase, like the first half of your cycle, kind of leading up to ovulation, you actually might feel a little bit less hungry during that time. Your body is energized, you have higher levels of testosterone, and so you kind of will notice that dip in appetite potentially. And then in that phase, it is really important to refuel because you might be doing more exercise during that time. You might feel more motivated.
Mm.
So that's something that my clients will lean into. They have lots more energy, they feel really good. And so they take advantage of it because, we talk about cycle syncing, and that, goes with exercise as well as eating.
Yeah. Thank you. And then anything about the menstrual phase?
Yeah. The menstrual phase too, I think there's a couple things that I note. So I am not the kind of coach that really gets into like really specific things, like really nitty gritty, like eat this specific food, because it has this nutrient, da, da, da. Like you can get into that for sure.
Mhm.
But I think that can be overwhelming for some. So generally in the menstrual phase, I think it's a really good idea to eat anything that is easy on your digestive system. Like we talked about, your uterine lining is shedding, and that's a whole process that your body is going through. So we want to kind of relieve the digestive system.
Okay.
Also, a large part of your digestive system is pretty close to your reproductive organs. So if you do experience like cramping, bloating, things like that on your period, you don't really want to make that worse with having any digestive discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think like soups, smoothies, like things that are really easy, like cooked vegetables, are good and maybe better than just like a raw salad, because there's a lot more fiber in raw vegetables that are hard to break down. And I always try to prepare maybe a few days up to my menstrual cycle, and then or menstrual phase, and then also during my period, red meats, iron consumption. So if you don't eat a lot of meat, or if you don't eat a lot of red meat, there's a lot of other ways to get iron in specific vegetables and legumes and things like that.
Yeah.
But just kind of being a little bit more aware of foods with iron, because we are losing blood. So we are losing some of that iron as well.
I love how approachable you make your coaching and your sessions, because that's something literally I've said this in other videos. Like my hope and my goal in all of these videos is to make them very approachable and easily digestible, because I think a lot of times, especially when we work with experts, they have so much information and they're a wealth of knowledge, and it's not a bad thing. This is not like bad at all, but it's we can get easily overwhelmed and lost in it, and when we get overwhelmed, then we're like, I'm not going to even try, or what's the point of trying, because I can't eat like all of these foods in every single phase and track every single thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I love how approachable and just like in general easier foods to digest in your menstrual phase.
And then I think too with my clients, so like an even easier place to start is seed cycling.
Mm,
So eating seeds in certain parts of your cycle. So the first half of your cycle, you're starting from the first day of your period through till ovulation, eating pumpkin seeds and flax seeds.
okay.
Um, Doing about a serving of those each day. Those two seeds in particular have a lot of nutrients that can support the hormone production and the hormones that we have in that part of our cycle. And then the second half of the cycle, having sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. So it's just, two different types of seeds, first half, second half. It's pretty simple to follow.
Mhm.
And there's tons of like guides and things like that on the internet too that you can follow, and
Mhm.
recipes. But I usually will just throw it on whatever I'm eating during that time.
Yeah.
Um, you can even get like pre-ground seeds, and
Uh-huh.
that makes it really easy too, because it's like a powder that you can put in like oatmeal or soups or
Mhm.
smoothies or pretty much anything.
Yeah. I usually throw pumpkin seeds, and then I think it's sesame seeds. I don't even know at this point, on
Mhm.
my oatmeal, and honestly, you just kind of get used to it. They don't really have too much of a flavor, so I feel like you
Mhm.
could add them on anything and it doesn't really bother. Does it matter if it's like sesame seed oil?
I am not sure, but I would
Hmm.
assume that we would probably get more nutrients from the whole seed.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it would probably be a lot better to have the full seed, but
Mm.
I don't think it would be harmful to have sesame oil in that part of your phase, or even anytime.
Yeah, sometimes I cook with it. It's nice when you're doing stir fries. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if it
Yeah.
makes a difference, but it's like the flavor profile is significantly different, in my opinion, than olive oil. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
beware.
But then
Sesame.
that would just make sense. Like it would pair really well if you just put some sesame seeds on top of your stir fry.
Yeah. Oh, true. True, true. Good point. Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else that you feel that you would like to share, or one specific part of your business or part of your heart in your business that you feel is very important for people to know, maybe beginning this journey of syncing to their cycle and kind of exploring all of that?
Yeah. I guess the one thing that comes to mind is to recommend to not wait to get a coach. Obviously, I'm saying that as a health coach, but with my own health journey, I was trying to DIY it myself for a long time. And it wasn't really until I hired a coach, and I only worked with her for a little while, but um, it wasn't until then that I really felt supported and like I could, you know, take care of all of the things that were going on with my health and really address it. And so I just see such value in having a coach because, like we've mentioned, a lot of this stuff can feel very overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's so much nutrition information and just health information out there. It gets overwhelming, and I can definitely like relate to that because I felt that a lot too. There were times where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this and this and this and this and this. And I have to eat this and I have to do this and I have to hydrate and like all of these different things. And it almost became a stressor for me to
Yeah.
make healthy choices. And so it's really helpful to have someone in your corner supporting you, especially if you are having any health issues or symptoms or any issues with your menstrual cycle too. That is like such an alarm bell for women that something's off in the body.
Yeah. And I think that it's really important to note that something that you is like a core value of yours and mine as well in my coaching is there's a difference between consuming information where people are telling you like this is what you should eat, this is what you need to eat to be successful or to achieve your goal or whatever it is, because it worked for them, and that's great that it worked for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And having, again, I see the benefit of having a coach, obviously, because and especially having a coach that is teaching you the tools to listen to your body, because it's not like you need this coach forever. Like you said, you only had your coach for a short period of time. Same with me in my health journey. I think I had my coach maybe for 2 months. I don't remember the amount of time, but learning how to listen to your body, that's an art, and that's not easy to build back up that communication, because we've spent our entire lives listening and giving our power away and listening to other people to tell us what's healthy and to tell us what's right for us. And I think that's really the power of intuitive eating as well. And learning that is because you are taking back your power and you're listening to your body. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for advocating with your clients, for your clients, to learn that language, that communication from the mind to the body, and learning how to decipher that, because it can be a little bit intimidating when we start. It can be very intimidating when we start, but it's a journey. And that's what I always say, like, remember, it's just a journey, and we don't have to do it alone either. And we're not really meant to do this life alone. So that's my
Yeah.
2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was super helpful. So to close, if people are interested in learning more about you, connecting with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Instagram. I guess that's my chosen platform.
Mhm.
So it's Rachel Claire with an E .hhc. And then my website is the same, except it's just Rachel Claire HHC. I also have a TikTok. I'm on Threads, Facebook. all those things, but I'm most active on Instagram and try to share as much as I can on there about all the things that I wish I knew and I'm continuing to learn. And yeah.
Awesome. And all that information is down below as well. So you can just click the links and you don't even have to search and try to find her, but just so you'll know. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. This was great.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.